Baker's Bourbon from Jim Beam has made the switch from small batch to single barrel. Is the new bottle design and a single barrel moniker on the label enough to bring Baker's Bourbon back into the spotlight? I'm Jason C. and welcome to the Mash and Drum Whiskey Room. Baker's Bourbon, one of the 4 Jim Beam small batch bourbons, has now made the move from small batch to single barrel bourbon. Now the good thing is that Baker's will keep its 7-year age statement, 107 proof point, and lower distillation proof, but now features a new bottle design and new labels that will give you details about each of the particular barrels, including the age, the warehouse in which it was aged, and the date it was barreled. Now one thing I've also noticed in some of the new bottles I've seen is that some of these bottles can get up to almost the 8-year mark, or pretty close, sometimes even past the 8-year-old mark. Now, whether they get much older than that on their standard bottles remains to be seen. Baker's was named for Baker Beam, who at the time only recently retired as a day shift master distiller at Jim Beam Distillery in Claremont. Now, his younger brother David worked the night shift, and Baker and David are the sons of Carl Shucks Beam, who preceded them as Claremont's master distiller. Baker's was launched in 1992 as one of 4 bourbons in the Jim Beam small batch bourbons collection, along with Knob Creek, Booker's, and Basil Hayden, like you see right here. For 27 years, I've been proud to lend my name to Baker's Bourbon, and I'm excited for this new chapter, said Baker Beam in a statement. Baker's has always been enjoyed by people who know a thing or two about their whiskey, and I think our fans are in for a real treat as we let the character of each single barrel come through. Baker's single barrel bourbon is bottled at 107 proof and is typically 7 years old, but could be older. The new bottles have recently started to hit shelves around the country for about $60 each. So for me, Baker's Bourbon was always the least talked about bottle in the small batch collection. Knob Creek was always the wildly popular for the price and flavor, like you see here. Basil Hayden was synonymous as a great starter bourbon, and Booker's carried the Booker no name, the wooden box, uncut, unfiltered, and super flavorful. But for me, Baker's had a fruitier flavor profile than most of the other small batch collections, so I really hope those attributes stay true here in the new bottle. So let's get into the nose and see what we get. Here we go. A lot of cinnamon and cherry coming through on this one. Now remember, this is a single barrel. They will differ from bottle to bottle or barrel to barrel as you taste different ones. But right now in this one, I'm getting a lot of cinnamon, a lot of cherry so far. Definitely that typical Beam nuttiness here. So on this, I'm getting a lot of barrel char too. There's a lot of barrel char coming through. Definitely that peanut flavor. This one is in warehouse CL5. Proof 107. This is 7 years, 9 months old, for those of you who didn't catch it on the close-ups of the bottle. So it's almost at that 8-year mark. Yeah, definitely peanut, barrel char. There is a little bit of dark fruit in there. Like I said, you're getting some cherry. Definitely your typical bourbon notes here, your vanillas, your caramels. Good amount of black pepper, too. I'm getting a slight fig note in here. There's like a Fig Newton type note going on. Yeah, Baker's for me always had a differentiation as far as a fruit profile to it, a little bit more fruity than the rest of the small batch collection, which had that extreme nuttiness profile that Beam is known for. That oak, the caramels, the vanillas. Every now and then you'll get somewhat fruity Booker's too, but Baker's small batch was always consistently a little bit on the fruitier side for me. This one is coming through as a little bit more cherry than I'm used to, but mainly I'm getting that peanut, that smoky barrel char in here. It's a good nose, just a solid bourbon. Nothing jumping out of the glass too much, but good solid nose. All right, let's go for a taste. Here we go. All right, so on the palate, not a lot going on the front of the palate. I usually like to feel that tingliness going on, but it's very sweet, very smooth up front. Gets into your caramels mid-palate. You do get some of that cherry as it works its way back. Once it hits the back of the palate, especially on this one, that's when you start getting more of that peanut, that oak, and a little bit of that cherry. It's coming across slightly medicinal, but let's go for another taste here. Cheers. So on that sip, I'm getting a lot more oak and the peanut on that one, and that barrel char is still coming through very strong. The cherry note is getting a little bit more subdued with each sip. It's not as fruity as I remember from the first sip. Let's go for another one. Here we go. Vanilla, caramels, still got that peanut flavor. Really nice balance on this bourbon. You have a good mix of sweet. You got a nice mix of barrel, oak. Still getting that hint of cherry there. A little bit of a peanut brittle honey characteristic going on too. As you let it sit on the palate, some of these sweeter honey notes start coming through as well. Let's go for another sip. Yeah, it's it's really good. It's really balanced. Nothing's really jumping out for me here. Yeah, the one differentiator here is just the cherry note that I'm getting. A little bit of that fig Newton too that I mentioned earlier. The honey characteristic, I think, is, if you were gonna give this particular barrel, a slight profile as a differentiator, I would say cherry and honey rather than just oak and peanut. But there is a lot of oak and peanut and char still to be found in this glass. So let's do a quick comparison to the old small batch. All right, guys, so now we have the old small batch poured here and the new Baker's here. So let's go into the nose on the old small batch and see what we get. Yeah, when you compare the two, actually this particular small batch, Baker's, is a lot more peanut. This one, I'm getting a little bit more of that cherry flavor. Yeah, a lot of peanut and vanilla on here. Vanilla extract. Slight fruitiness to it too that I'm getting on this one too. There's a little bit more of that cherry note that I'm picking up slightly, which is welcome, kind of a welcome flavor. It's one of the things I miss in the Baker's. Like I said, I think it's that differentiator, but I just don't think not enough people really paid attention to that. There is a little bit more fruit in the Baker's usually, but this one for me, coming off this one, is coming off more peanut. Let's go for a sip of the small batch. Here we go. Yeah, see, on the palate, the Baker's small batch is way lighter. There is a slight fruitiness to it, but it's coming off more just peanut, peanut brittle, honey roasted peanut. Little hint of chocolate there too I was getting. Not very, but like a milk chocolate, not a dark chocolate at all. It's not bitter. Again, good balance. It just seems a little lighter on the palate than this one. This one, the Baker's, the new single barrel, I feel like has more flavor, a little bit more balance to it. Let's go for a sip here. Yeah, I feel like you get more oak, a little bit better balance here on the Baker's single barrel. Comes through more of a flavor burst. Now, this Baker's small batch has been open for a little while, so that could be a contributing factor here. But I'm not getting a lot of oak presence like I'm getting on this Baker. This particular bottle of Baker's single barrel has a lot of barrel char to it, really picking up the barrel char. Let's get another sip on the small batch. All right, so now the fruit's starting to come out here in the small batch a little bit. I got a lot more cherry there. Little hints of an apricot or a peach maybe. Let's go back to the single barrel real quick. Yeah, this particular bottle just has, it's the oak presence and the barrel char and the peanut that's just really overtaking the palate here. That cherry note has gone away slightly. It's not really there too much anymore. You're getting vanilla, you're getting caramel, you're getting a nice balance. That peanut characteristic is there. When you compare it to the small batch, the old small batch, the small batch is just a little bit lighter, less oaky, slightly fruity. So, interesting comparison, and I could see there is definitely a difference between the new single barrel and the old small batch. So for me, I think this is a solid bourbon. It's got your typical bourbon characteristics, your vanilla, your caramel. It's got the bean peanut brittle there. It's really nice. Definitely has more of an oak profile to me than the regular small batch did. This is almost 8 years old. It's a little older, but I'm picking up a lot of barrel char in this one. Good amount of cherry too, but seems to tail off the more you sip it. However, I'm having a hard time seeing how this new version as a 7-year-old, 107 proof single barrel priced at $60 is worth the price of admission when Knob Creek single barrel is a 9-year-old at 120 proof and only about $40. Baker's, I think, is priced a bit too high in my opinion when you can get Knob Creek single barrel, rare breed, even Old Ezra 7-year, all for well under $60. Now, if the new Baker's has anything going for it, it's the transparency. With all the information they provide as to age, warehouse, barreling date, this will make it fun for bourbon hunters to seek out a particular single barrel bottle that really stood out as something special. So for me, while a good solid bourbon, Baker's is, I think, a try before you buy, just in case you run into a can't miss single barrel that could be worth the $60 price tag. All right, everybody, well, I hope you enjoyed this review for the new Baker's Single Barrel 7-Year Bourbon from Jim Beam. Hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button below. Please hit that like button. Find me on Instagram and find me on Twitter. Let me know if you've had this one yet, what you think of it. Do you think it's worth the price of admission? Always love talking with you guys. And as I always say, it is not about the whiskey. It's the people you share it with. So cheers, and I'll see you next time on The Mash and Drum.